I'm Celia Sawyer. I'm an interior designer. I basically work very high-end homes like this one. I create all my own furniture. I work with high net worth people, anyone from pop stars, movie stars, business people, and I thoroughly enjoy what I do, and I hope you do too.
Welcome to Richtopia, Celia.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you very much for inviting me.
You're welcome, it's nice to meet you.
And you?
So let's get straight to the questions.
Okay.
Who inspires you the most?
Well, that's a good question, but it's not one person. Obviously if I see business people that are doing really well, I'm inspired. Equally, if I see a working mother who started a business or anyone who sort of works for someone that works particularly hard, I feel inspired. So it's all really about the person and the amount of hard work they put into something as opposed to what they really do. So sometimes I'll meet someone in a restaurant, they might be the waitress or whatever, but they really stand out because they work particularly hard. They have a really good way about them, and I think to myself, I think you'll go far. And people like that. Or, for instance, there are people, that you meet that have come from a very poor background. It's not the environment they're in, it's just the people that I've met throughout life, and I think they are something that I always think, great, I think that is inspirational. I think, you don't necessarily be brought up with a comfortable lifestyle to do well. You can be doing anything. And, I know lots of working mums that are doing really well, and they have small businesses. They don't necessarily make loads of money, but they're very happy. And that's another important thing, to remember about business, isn't it? You've got to enjoy it.
What does being an entrepreneur mean to you?
I don't call myself one, but I think it's about being hardworking, honest and enjoying what you do, and not really stopping, just keep striving for the next goal, because I think you need to be ambitious if you call yourself entrepreneur.
How do you give yourself the fuel, the ambition?
A lot of it is from reading lots of books, actually. I love reading, the old-fashioned way where I open a book and not online.
Yeah, I like that. It's good to read the actual physical books.
It is, isn't it? And do you like reading books as well?
Yeah, I've read lots. At one point I read 300 books in 300 days, so I was going through a whole book a day.
Wow, that is a lot. But that's actually really clever, because I know that I went to see someone called Anthony Robbins, who you probably heard of, and he used to read book after book after book after book, and I thought, that's interesting, because then you can cram a lot of information in a short space of time. So I started doing a similar thing, and so when I was on holiday, for instance, I would open a book, but it would be about someone who was, in business doing well, or a life story where they were very inspirational. I'd much prefer to sit and read something like that than lay on the beach and read something that was, a story made up. I'm just one of those people, I always think you should be moving forward. That helps me strive forward.
What are some of the top books that you recommend to our viewers?
Well, I like books like Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, which is a very sweet little book, very small. I don't know if you've read it, but it's about this seagull that's trying to fly higher than everyone else. And of course, there's a message in that, very clear message. And I always try and encourage young people, because I do a lot of mentoring at schools, and I try and encourage young people, keep reading books, read books about, because they always ask you questions that you think are so obvious, but they're not obvious to other people, the answers. So they might say, what made you start your business? And I don't really know what made me start it. I just thought, I'm going to try something different now. And so I started a business I knew nothing about, which is always fun. In more ways than one, it's a bit scary, but it can go really excitingly well. And I think, if you read other people's stories, you see a familiarity along the way, that a lot of people have done exactly the same things as you and how it's worked out for them. So it's important to keep doing that.
If you could go back by 10 years, what business advice would you give yourself?
Well, I think I'm doing all right, actually. As in, if I go back 10 years, I'd still be saying the same things that I say to myself now, which would be work really hard. I suppose one thing is, perhaps I've got used to now all the stumbling blocks along the way. I tell myself that there will be stumbling blocks along the way, because obviously I now know that. A lot of people give up when they hit something like that. And I mean, I don't know about you, but when you start a business sometimes, it takes a long time, and then you suddenly get something good coming back from, all your efforts. And then what happens is you suddenly hit a bit of a rock again, and you think, oh no. And that's often when people give up. So I would say, don't give up, keep going, you're going to get through those stumbling blocks, and just keep going through them.
Could you give us examples?
Well, I think, for instance, you start something. I started a photography business a while ago, which was basically getting work for photographers. Now, I didn't know anything about it. So I thought, well, I'll give it a go because, I'm quite smart and I can go out and I can talk to people in advertising agencies. And I've got a good eye for photography. So I picked some good photographers, I felt. Went traipsing around with these cases for 6 months. Phone didn't ring. I was thinking, oh no. Anyway, eventually it ran. Got a big campaign with Saatchi's. And from there I thought, this is it, it's all going to go away. And it did for a while. But then all of a sudden things got tough again and we were competing against a lot of people and we weren't winning the same amount of work. And I thought, is that it, And you ask yourself that question, do I need to change the way I'm working with this business? Or is it me? Is it them? Is it what? Have I made a mistake? Judging yourself again. Those are the sort of stumbling blocks. You've got to think, no, hang on, don't be silly, be sensible, always hit things. There's always things that come up in your way and you've just got to keep going. And it's just perseverance, I think, in the end that gets you through.
How have you gone about growing your client base and what would you recommend to our viewers to do the same?
All my clients have come from the fact that I've worked for other people that have then recommended me. Providing you're working really hard to your budget on time and you don't let people down, then you will go forward and build more clients. That is what happens, basically. It's one of those natural things that carries on if you don't mess up. So I make sure that I'm very, very professional and work very hard for people because they're paying me a lot of money to do what I do. There has to be trust in that and they have to trust that you're not going to let them down and then you will build more clients. It's as simple as that.
If you were Prime Minister for one day, what things would you change?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I find really hard, because I didn't do very well at school, so I'm not the sharpest tool in the box when it comes to things on computers with loads of forms and things like that. So, for instance, at the moment, they've brought in this thing about pensions into businesses, and all this. And to get the information, to get your PAYE people on a pension scheme from the government website is like a nightmare to me. I mean, I just think, why don't you just simplify things? Make it easy for businesses so that they don't mess up, they don't miss the deadline because they can't understand or find which way to go. Then they say, oh, look on the government website. And you look on the government website, and for people like myself, and obviously there are people that can understand all that jargon, that they're pages of stuff, I find it an absolute nightmare. And I think, why can't you just say, step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3. So I would change that. I would make it much simpler for businesses when they bring in some new legislation.
Couldn't agree with you more.
I think we're getting on quite well.
If you hadn't decided to be an interior designer, what would you have been?
Well, I didn't really decide to be an interior designer. I just wanted to do something that would make me some money. I've done quite a few different things, and this business sort of came from me kind of trying to make money on property, I suppose. So I bought an apartment, added another floor to it eventually when I could afford to, and then designed the interior, and someone saw it and said, can I do theirs? And it kind of went from there. So it wasn't a choice consciously to be an interior designer, but I really think that because I've got quite a creative side, it would probably be something creative. However, I do think that because business is pretty much business and the same elements apply in any business you're in, I think probably I could do pretty much anything.
What tips would you give to others for their interior designs?
Start off small, I think, and don't get a big office because you don't need one. It will cost you loads of money. You don't need loads of staff. I did everything myself at the beginning. I was working all the hours, all through the night to try and get things done. But you can do it. And then once you start to get clientele, then, build from that. And tips for the home, did you want as well?
Yeah, like how about for me, like for my home, for example?
I think tips for interior design to re-spruce, quite simply, is to go through and declutter, because I bet you most people have got a room full of old doors, drawers, furniture, junk that they haven't used for like over 5 to 10 years. And if you haven't missed it for 2 years, I believe, then you're not going to miss it. So get rid of it, declutter, and then start again. A fresh lick of paint, move your furniture around, just give it a different look. It's very simple, and I think also go out and buy some nice artwork or accessories. They don't need to cost much.
What has been your biggest business mess up to date?
I haven't had a big business mess up to date, so I'm keeping everything crossed that doesn't change. I know that obviously there are always obstacles that come up, and I'm not saying that will never happen, but I've been very lucky so far. I'm quite cautious. I don't suddenly start thinking, oh wow, you know, this is it, I'm going to be really silly and go and overspend on something in my business and then regret it. I'm very, very cautious, so I haven't messed up. I suppose the only thing I would say is maybe I haven't expanded quick enough. Maybe that's a mess up, but as in sensibly expanded. I could have pushed a little bit more to perhaps grown the business in slightly different angles, more with the furniture that I create, but really I haven't messed up as far as I'm concerned. I'm lucky.
What are some of your future goals?
Well, at the moment I'm working on a home line, so basically tabletop accessories for the home, which affordable luxury, so that you can go to the high street and buy the pieces. I'm also working with my furniture, which I create myself, and it's all made in the UK, which is great. I do a lot of charity work, but I'm building on that as well. I work a lot with the British Heart Foundation, various other charities, and Football for Peace, and I'm also a board advisor on that. And I really enjoy that part of it, so I want to do more of that and more of mentoring kids, because when I can, I give them the opportunity to come in and work with me and see, you know, what it's like on the other side, because it's the best way to learn, isn't it?
If someone that was interviewing you could ask you one question, what would you want them to ask you?
Am I happy, I suppose?
So are you happy?
I am. It's really funny. I feel quite content with the way things are going. It's funny, I got stopped in the street by, I won't say who, but they were kind of like doing a survey on people and what would you like to change about yourself? Well, apart from my age, which I can't do anything about, there's nothing really. And what do you think you should be doing? And I said, no, I'm doing exactly what I should be. And, you know, they were asking me all these questions. I thought to myself afterwards, actually, I'm quite content with how I am and how I've done and where I am. And I think it's very important to remember that all the way through the journey of any business or through life, you must try and enjoy the journey, because otherwise you're missing the point.
And what are some of your last words for our viewers?
Work hard, enjoy what you do. That is the most important thing. It's not about money, it's about enjoyment. I enjoy a deal, I enjoy creating, I enjoy making money, but if it's not really your thing, just enjoy what you do and just do it well.
Thank you, Celia. It was great speaking with you.
Pleasure. And you. So I created pretty much all the furniture that you see here. The coffee table was drawn on a napkin in a restaurant, and you know, I needed something to fill a very big space. So I basically drew it with a floating leg so that you don't see the base of it hitting the floor, basically. That's all that means. Nothing technical. And the sideboard here, which I made out of mirror with a fabric front door, and I had these handles specially made. So they're rather nice. And this was also designed on the back of a napkin while I was sitting at Pizza Express with my children, in fact.
Oh, wow.
I needed something to fill a space, and I thought I just had this idea and it came over me while I was sat there. So I quickly sketched it out, and this is the creation that came out of it. And there's a couple in the hallway here which I think we should look at, because they were inspired by the outside. These are my creation here, just beveled mirror. Look quite glamorous, but at the same time we've got a bit of nature going on here, which I thought was rather nice. And again, you know, just designed by me, made in the UK. Craftsman made these, actually took real twigs and then made these out of bronze, and then this was all made out of mirror, which worked out really nicely. So I'm very pleased with my furniture. In fact, I made this hallway very, very glitzy, because first impressions mean a lot when you're going into a property of this sort of ilk. So it's very important that it looks very glamorous and very shiny. This room is the man's sort of den, I think. I think it's kind of quite masculine, which I like. We have a drinks cabinet, of course, and we have a nice croc-style desk, and especially with him on the wall, which was picked, obviously deliberately, to suit the male of the house. I thought this was quite a brave move, this red. It's quite on fire, isn't it? But I thought it was quite cool, and it sort of really stood out. It's quite punchy. So I was quite pleased with this. Well, thank you very much for watching, and I hope it's helpful, and good luck with your businesses.